very seriously by upsetting the expectations of the entire Hollywood industry. Recently, he released a film based on his New York Times bestseller book that bears and shares the same name, entitled Think Like a Man. Its contents in no small way have impacted the dating life in the African American culture. It's called Sisters to Operate with Expectation and Not Act in Desperation. He advises that you won't be able to go far without discussing short and long-term goals. Steve Harvey further alerts women to take heed as to how they are introduced. For if they are in your presence but do not take possession, then it's a sign you need to pass. Causing the greatest amount of controversy is the question as to whether standards are too high or is compromise too low. An empirical truth is something that will work anywhere. If it is true, it is true. The law of gravity is an empirical truth. So as a consequence, if I throw something in the air in Chicago, it'll hit the ground. Take that same object and throw it in the air in Hawaii, it'll hit the ground. Which means that that truth is founded. It doesn't matter the environment. As a consequence, the audience of readers has expanded beyond its original intention of the African American niche and has meandered its way into mainstream, touching all different ethnicities, economies, and educational backgrounds. I contend to you, ladies and gentlemen, that if in fact this book is an empirical truth, then it should not be regulated as to how man deals just with woman. But if it speaks to the secrets of a healthy relationship, then the same things ought to be transferable as to how I relate to God. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, when I deal with God, God is asking us, what are your short-term goals? And the reality is he does not want to be bothered if you don't have long-term goals. Every time you come into worship, your praise ought to be a reflection of expectation. It ought not be a dance of desperation. He's interested to gauge what you really feel about him based off of how you introduce him in public. When he is in your presence, are you possessive? That you're able to say, the Lord is my shepherd. The Lord is my light and my salvation. The Lord is the strength of my life. And many of you have a casual relationship with God because you have not yet given him a title. You see him at the designated dating spot on Sunday, and he'll hear from you when you are in a crisis, but he has not heard from you just so that you can talk. The question that God has with you in the relationship you claim you have with him is, how much do you compromise? Have you given up too much of yourself for a third party one night stand? Have you negotiated your sanity, your spirituality, and your integrity with somebody who won't make a covenant? Why is your expectation not high? You ought to be believing God not for the mediocre, not for the mundane, not for the average, but your expectation ought to be of such that God has something so overwhelming for me that whenever you step to me, you better bring your best game, because I'm not used to average and I won't settle for less. The book has become so remarkably successful that there has become a demand for a film. In the release of the book in 2009, the book did not expect to become a movie. But hear me. The people did not just want to hear the words, they wanted to see if it worked. So when we get into the New Testament, ladies and gentlemen, much of what it is that we hear God talk about are three things. God more often than not talks about money, relationships, and faith. We hear him talk about faith in Matthew chapter 17, verse number 20. If you have the faith the size of a mustard seed, you can tell mountains, get out of your way. In Matthew chapter 9, verse number 22, your faith has made you whole. Mark chapter 11, verse number 23, have faith in God, and that is enough. In Luke chapter 22, verse number 32, I pray that your faith won't fail, because Satan desires to sift you like wheat. But after God, through his son Jesus, had done all of that talking about faith, he now needed a movie. It was not sufficient for him to just talk about it without a demonstration to see if it worked. I am here, ladies and gentlemen, to alert some of you in the place to know that in this moment, God is finished talking. What he's getting ready to do next is show you what he has in mind for you. People who really have something don't have to talk about it. God, I can't find nobody. They will be a demonstration. And I want you to know, ladies and gentlemen, in the next 30 days, you are going to be the star in your own movie. Because God is getting ready to show all of your haters and observers what a demonstration of faith looks like. Everything that has happened up to this moment, hear me, ladies and gentlemen, was just a sneak preview. But what is getting ready to happen from the moment you leave this service is going to be the full-length movie presentation to show the enemy, if God is for you, who can be against you? I don't know whether you realize it or not, but all the relationships that didn't work was just the rough cut. Every person who was no longer with you was just auditioning. All the people who were thinking they were getting over on you, they don't even know what they did to you was going to end up on the editing floor. But God says, I'm rolling out the red carpet. Make sure your enemies are close, because they want to get a good look at what I'm getting ready to do into your life. There's somebody in this room who doesn't even understand. You've gone through enough heartbreak, enough desperation. You've gone through enough compromise, lowering your standards, your morals, your integrity, your ideals. God says the next time you don't have to go down, they're going to have to come up. God, I can't hear nobody in here. What I'm getting ready to do for children of God, hear me, ladies and gentlemen, is that your mind has got to be resolved. You don't have to have my same educational background. You don't have to have my same economic index. You don't have to have my same sphere of influence. But what you do have to have is my same love for God. Because if you don't love God the way I love God, we can't even talk. If you got a problem with coming to church, you got the wrong one. If you got an attitude because I'm lifting up God and reading my Bible and got a prayer life, you better go find somebody else, because my relationship with God is non-negotiable. Be seated, please, right where you are. There's getting ready to be a demonstration that God is getting ready to show you, hear me, what you are to do when you are desperate for him. You will never be desperate for a man. God, y'all just missed it. I said, when you are desperate for him, you will be never desperate for a man or for a woman. Some people, ladies and gentlemen, think you have an attitude problem. They think that you're uptight, that you're mean because you ain't just laughing in people's face. They don't understand. I've been through too much hurt to just open myself up to anybody that got a compliment and a smile. I don't need you to buy me dinner. I can buy my own dinner. I can be my best company by myself because I understand who I am. There comes a line in a time, ladies and gentlemen, and I say with great trepidation, and some of you are going to get upset, is that some of the most desperate women are church women. Oh, God. And I feel tomatoes coming from this area over here. Yes, and you giving a bad name to the kingdom. That you claim you love God, but you chasing a man down all over town. There's ought to be some standard that you understand. You can try that with them other chicken heads, but when you find a woman of God who knows her worth and knows her value and knows there's a call on her life, you ain't blowing no man's phone up, and can I say it? And you ain't checking no man's phone, because you understand if God has him on my call, then I know what my assignment is. All right? So that there has to be a call that when a man dates a Christian woman, he understands he's dealing with a peculiar species that is fearfully and wonderfully made. A Christian woman who understands that before the foundations of the world, God knew who I was, and he already had somebody in mind for me. A Christian woman who knows my value far exceeds rubies and pearls. A Christian woman that understands it's only going to be 90 days if you put a ring on it. A Christian woman that understands that my value is greater than a compliment, that I don't need you to tell me I look nice today. When I looked in the mirror, I knew I had it going on. A Christian woman ought to have a different standard for herself. Steve Harvey is a dear friend and big brother to me, and I want to say openly that I appreciate the book. I only have a problem with a few things, and I'm not going to deal with all of them in that setting, but the one problem that I have with the book that translates to the film is the ambiguity of the title. And the ambiguity of the title, ladies and gentlemen, is Think Like a Man. Now, the problem with that is that he is not clear on what man I ought to think like. So if God help me, so if it is that I read the book and I watch the film, I got a problem, Steve. Do you want me to think like the man who's a mama's boy? Do you want me to think like a man who's scared of commitment? Do you want me to think like a man who is unmotivated and ashamed of his past? Do you want me to think like a man who is healing from a divorce? Do you want me to think like a man who thinks that he is a player? Surely these are not the kind of men you want me to think like. And I sat at the edge of my seat waiting for the film to expose to me what is the kind of man a lady ought to think like. And I could not find him anywhere in that film, but I found him, sisters. I found the man you ought to be thinking like in Matthew chapter 8. In Matthew chapter 8, I found a man. If you're going to act like a lady, this is the man you ought to be thinking like. In Matthew chapter 8, watch this, ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Jesus gets into a boat. And when he gets into the boat in Matthew chapter 8, verse number 23, watch this. A storm begins to break out. The storm begins to break out, and Jesus is asleep on the ship. And those who were on the boat with him began screaming, Master, carest thou not if we perish? Lord, save us. What I'm getting ready to say is going to redefine and help you re-examine some relationships. Hear me, that if you are in a storm, the test that you are in a full, healthy relationship, watch this, is if you are in a storm and you are comfortable asking for help. God, y'all are getting ready to miss it. See, if me and you are together and I'm going through something and I'm uncomfortable sharing with you about what I'm going with, that relationship is not on even par. But because they had a healthy relationship with God, when the storm looked like it was taking them down, they said, Lord, save me. And I understand now why some of y'all don't shout in church, because you and God ain't tight like that. But there are others of us, we feel like we getting ready to go down, feel like we getting ready to lose it, and this ain't my time to be cute. Look at your neighbor and say, that's my boo. That's when I think about God and all he's done for me, you ain't got to scream. I'm a screamer. But when I get in his presence, I got to lift up his voice because he's that much to me. And be seated, please. And here's what's crazy. Jesus is on the boat with them. He ain't in heaven. He's on the boat. And they screamed, save me. Ladies and gentlemen, when I'm shouting in God's house, it's not because I'm scared he don't hear me. I'm shouting because I need him to know this is an emergency. God, hear me. I'm cute, dignified, sophisticated, and bougie all week long. But when I get in my daddy's house, you can't tell me how to make no. God. Hallelujah. If you sitting by a praiser, look at him and tell him, get a room. God, hear me. This is the day the Lord has made. I gotta rejoice and be glad. Watch this. So they scream, Lord, save us. And as soon as they said, Lord, save us, Jesus stood up. And he doesn't even speak to them. He looks at the wind and the waves. God, I feel like preaching. And says, peace, be still. God, help me. I need you to understand what just happened, ladies and gentlemen, is that when he said, peace, be still, he wasn't talking to the people. He's talking to the wind and the waves. Why is that important? Watch this. Wind is the cause of the storm. Waves is the effect of the storm. When you got a real man, God help me, that man is not afraid to deal with the cause of your issue. God, I can't hear nobody. When you got a real man, a man will help you deal with the effect of what you went through in your past. Look at your neighbor, tell him I ain't the cause of my issues, but I am the effect of my issues. But when you got a man that ain't scared of storms, but you got a man, watch this, that's a weather tamer, that says I'll take you with all your issues. I'll take you with your past. I'll take you with your hang-ups. I'll take you with your diseases. I'll take you with your scar. Look at your neighbor. Tell him I ain't scared of the storm. Whatever you went through in 2009 and 2010, that was the cause. But 2012 is the effect. But I came to look the devil in the face and say, in the middle of my storm, peace. Okay. Oh, my. Woo. Be seated, please. I'm coming around the mountain. Here I come. Be seated right where you are. Be seated, please, right where you are. Hallelujah. Look at your neighbor. Tell them today, two things are getting ready to be healed. The cause of your storm and the effect of your storm. If you ain't been through a storm, you better not sit next to me, because I just heard my grandmother say, the storm is passing over. Hallelujah. If you've been going through a storm, you've been dealing with is under my feet. And if there's anybody here that's been going through a storm, don't wait till the battle is over, but shout right now like the storm. Be seated, please. All right. Be seated. I only got 3 more times to tell you that. Be seated, please. Hallelujah. 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 I don't know who this is for, but the Lord just dropped this in my spirit. But you just tap 2 people and tell them it's almost over. It's almost over. I don't care what it is. I don't care how hard it's been. I don't care how trying it's been. But God told me to tell you, you got here because it's almost over. Hallelujah. Be seated. I only got 2 more times to tell you that. I'm hearing that ringing in my spirit. Hallelujah. I just need 90 of y'all to really just help me through here. Just 90 if you'll just help me preach and just shout, it's almost over. We got to move 11:30, getting ready to turn on Righteous Town. But just elbow your neighbor, tell him it's almost over. This been a hell of a year for you, but it's almost over. Hallelujah. It's almost. A mistake the enemy made, ladies and gentlemen, is before the enemy sent the storm, he should have found out who my man was first. If I had some pushover Trump, mealy mouth scared, then he should have sent a different kind of storm. But because I got a man that can put his foot in the sea, that can speak those things that are not, I can handle the storm. All right. All right. Hallelujah. I got to tell you something. Please be seated. I got to tell you something. Please be seated. I'm begging you. Be seated. In the next verse, ladies and gentlemen, he releases something that many of us in the 21st century neo-Pentecostal church tradition have taken for granted. It says, in the middle of your storm, I was not just talking to the storm, I was talking to you. Peace. Be still. God, you want to act like a lady? Stop running around. You want to carry yourself with some dignity? Sit your fast behind down. Be still. Says, I am giving you a season where you are not going to be stressed out, where you are not going to be weary. God help me. He says, I am not sending some insecure, immature Negro into your life to mess you and your children up. Be still. You ain't got to go find a man. I'm going to send one. Be still. Says, peace, be still. I really need you to be seated, please. I really do. I really do. I'm almost done, but hallelujah. Every person in this room, last 18 to 36 months, you came through a bad breakup, a harrowing divorce, a collapse of a relationship that knocked the wind out of you. I need you to just lift that hand for me, right? So I know who I'm preaching to. Yes. Hallelujah. Now, I need you to wave that hand at me. That's the waves. God help me. Yes. Hallelujah. And so after the relationship, there were nights you couldn't sleep. Keep waving at me. There were days you were either couldn't eat or you were overeating. There were moments you were second guessing your own identity and trying to figure out, was it me? Did I do something wrong? Keep waving at me. That there were nights you had to talk yourself. I ain't gonna call them. I ain't gonna call them. I ain't gonna call them. But God told me to tell you, peace, be still. That I am now releasing into this house a season of peace. That nobody gonna be able to stress you, upset you, or anger you, because the joy of the Lord is your strength.